we actually feel an emotion physically before our mind realizes what it is.
You are listening to the Alzheimer's Podcast with Mike Good of Togetherness, your number one resource for practical tips and insights, empowering you and your family to live well with Alzheimer's. Hello, I'm Mike Good of Togetherness. Welcome to episode 56 of the Alzheimer's Podcast, your number one source for practical tips and insights. My goal is always to empower you and your family to maintain a positive experience, reduce and eliminate the need for medications, and make your time together with those you care for the best it can be. This week, I'm thrilled to have Janet Fouts join us to share tips and strategies to help you apply the technique of mindfulness into your daily routine. As a care partner for someone with dementia, you know how consuming and overwhelming it can be. So it's extremely important that you find ways to release the stress and focus your awareness on the moment. This will not only benefit your well-being, but it will also help you to maximize the good times with your loved one. As Christy Turner said in a past episode, years from now you won't remember the dishes that didn't get washed, but you will remember the time you spent with your loved one. It's very difficult to slow down and remember this, but if you listen to Janet and begin implementing her suggestions, you will see an improvement. Janet Fouts is a caregiver and a mindfulness coach, working with people to improve self-awareness and be happy in their lives at home and at work. Her journey as a caregiver inspired the transition from a well-respected social media marketer and CEO to mindfulness coaching after discovering the value of mindfulness and emotional intelligence in rescuing her from depression and anxiety. She shares her learnings in her book, When Life Hits the Fan, a mindful guide to caring for ourselves while caring for others, which is now available on Amazon. Well, hello, Janet, and welcome to the Alzheimer's Podcast. It's great to have you here today.
Hey, thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. Janet, I did a quick review of your book, and there's a lot of great things in there, and I'm looking forward to having you share some of those today. But in your book, you say, like many caregivers, I had gone into caregiving with all of my heart, totally unprepared, and didn't leave any room or thought for anything else, including myself. And although I know it's extremely important, I'm always a little hesitant when someone wants me to share about self-care or stress reduction, because I think those caring for someone with dementia often feel too overwhelmed to implement and maintain the techniques required. So before we get into the details, can you help me and our listeners get past this feeling?
Yeah, absolutely. And I really do resonate with that. You know, the longer an illness is and the more attention that it demands, like dementia and Alzheimer's, the harder it is for us as caregivers to allow ourselves a moment, just a moment of peace. And that can be really obsessive. And sometimes we can get so wrapped up in it that we don't allow ourselves that moment of peace, even when the timing is there and it's possible. And so one of the things that I really recommend that people do is just recognize when you're in that constant churning mode and you feel like you're completely overwhelmed, because the more that we stay in that mode, the worse it's going to get, and it just builds on itself. And if we can just make a practice of checking in with ourselves throughout the day and saying, okay, where's my head right now? And really think about it. Do I have to be doing what I'm doing? Am I so wound up that I just can't stop? And if you are, take a breath. Just one inhale and a very slow exhale. And besides the obvious with this, what's happening in your body is that when we take these long, slow breaths, and especially a long exhale is really important, we're stimulating the vagus nerve. And this nerve, actually, it's near our heart, and it helps us to relax. And it can actually kick in and relax your whole body. And you could do that with just one breath. If you do this throughout the day, you'll find that the frenzy just lessens a little bit.
That's very interesting. Called the Vegas, as in Las Vegas, or?
Sort of, VAGUS.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. And then also, I've tried mindfulness and that before, and I'm not even in the throes of caregiving, and I come out, for a week or so, and I remember, and then I start to forget to do that. And I'm hoping today you're able to share some techniques that can help us remember to engage in, mindfulness and all. So, but before we get to that, sorry, can you explain to me and our listeners about mindfulness and what that is a little bit more?
Sure. A lot of people are confused about that because they think that mindfulness is all about meditation.
Right.
And really all mindfulness is the practice of being present in this moment right now. It's really that simple.
I went to a monastery once, and I think they were practicing that, and a gong would go off every few minutes, and that would help me remember. Mm-hmm. Is that the same? Was that the same kind of principle? Do you know?
Yeah, some of the monasteries do ring a gong or a bell or something just to bring us back to presence.
Right.
And it's really just supposed to get us out of where we're at. And what I do is I have a timer on my phone, and it just goes off periodically throughout the day. And when I hear that chime, I'll just go, oh, okay, where am I right now? Where's my head? What am I doing? And it just reminds us to be fully here, not worried about the past, not worried about the future.
I like that because with technology, we have that capability to set those reminders. And it could even be a chime or a gong or something, and that'll help us to do that. And I have to share with you as a techie, because I told you we're both from the Bay Area, Silicon Valley area. We have these watches nowadays that can monitor your heart rate and stuff. And I thought it'd be so cool if that had feedback for caregivers to help them remember to practice mindfulness.
Yes. And, one way to really find out if this stuff works is if you have one of those apps that monitors heart rate, you can, when you realize that you're kind of wound up, turn on that app and then take a couple of deep breaths and see if it slows your heart down. See if it calms your frenzy.
That's a great idea. So you say we don't have to meditate, but meditation can be part of it. Is that what you mean? Or
absolutely, meditation can be, but I think a lot of people have so many misconceptions of what meditation is. They think that you sit in the lotus position and chant Om
right.
for a really long time.
Right.
And it's really not. You can meditate in a moment. It doesn't have to be a long, drawn out thing. And, like doing the breathing exercises, meditation is something that you can let grow on you. You can do just a few seconds or a minute or 5 minutes or an hour. You don't have to stick yourself to one thing or the other. It's really about just checking in with yourself and allowing the thoughts that are in your head to be thoughts, and to understand that thoughts are not actually actions. They're just thoughts. We can let them go. We don't have to chase them.
And nobody can hear them. Nobody knows them, right? That's something I've had to teach myself, is that, these thoughts I have, because I hold myself so accountable for things. I'm like, well, I just had a bad thought, but nobody else knows about it, so let it go. And and when you're caregiving and you're in those throes, and maybe your loved one's being a little contentious or things just aren't going your way, there's a lot of there's just a lot of different emotions that a caregiver can go through, right? And if we can let that go and practice this mindfulness, that should be able to help us and our listeners in their everyday lives, I imagine.
It's so true, and one of the things that we do to ourselves is we don't realize a very simple fact, and that's that negativity is a natural part of life. And just recognizing that someone is negative right now, or we've said something negative, or something negative is happening, we got to stop pushing that away and going, oh, that's negative. We can't have that here. Because when we do that, we're actually focusing on the negativity. Whereas if we just went, oh, that's negative, and then decide if we need to make a change or if we need to just let it pass as what it is. With my father, he had Alzheimer's, and towards the end, he became a very angry man. And it was really frustrating to him to have issues where he wasn't communicating what he thought he was communicating. It was very, very difficult. And I remember being really, really angry with him when I know that he isn't like that. It just is how he was trying to express himself in a huge level of frustration. And when we can just go, okay, he's got a huge level of frustration. He's really being a jerk right now. But in my heart, I know that's not my father. We got to let it go. Because if we stick on that, it's going to eat us up.
That is such a difficult situation to go through, and remember that it's not our loved one, it's the disease, and to let it go and let it pass. And that's why it's great that I see, you're a caregiver yourself, you have that, you can relate to caregivers and you have that empathy. And why is your focus on caregivers so important?
Because as a caregiver myself, I realized how much trauma I was putting myself through that I didn't have to. And as I started to search for ways to get out of that, to get out of the depression and the incredible negativity and the exhaustion, I really started to really understand why mindfulness was so important. And I expanded into quite a bit of education to really understand that. And I don't want anyone to experience that again.
Depression is a really big problem with caregivers. It consumes you, and before you even know it, and people don't realize how prevalent depression is with our caregivers. So the sooner you can recognize that and to fight back, whether it's through mindfulness or I say fight back, maybe that's not the best choice of words, but find a way to balance your life to overcome it. And maybe mindfulness is that approach.
I think mindfulness is a beautiful way to help yourself through it. But of course, if you really need help, get help. Don't wait. Don't put it off, because there can come a time when you're going to do something that you really don't want to do. So, really recognizing how you're feeling is one of the absolute most important things about mindfulness, so that we're really in touch with ourselves. It's about being self-aware. And sometimes when we're a caregiver, we're so focused on the person that we're caring for that we are not self-aware, and we get into trouble before we know it. So if you need help, get help.
I'm trying to picture the adult daughter, if you will, and she's got a busy life. She's got her family, her kids. She's got a job. She's thrust into this role as a dementia caregiver, and it consumes her before she realizes. And maybe she's out there listening to us now. And so can we maybe walk through, do you have a scenario or something maybe we can walk through how she would use mindfulness throughout her day?
Sure, I definitely can. Sometimes when we're overwhelmed like that and we've got so many balls up in the air, we may need to take a look at what we're doing and how we're doing it and see if there's a way to prioritize. One of the things that we do is multitasking to the max. We've got 9,000 things going on all at once. And to be honest, multitasking is not actually something we can do. What we're doing is doing multiple tasks badly all at once. That's not really a good way to get things done, and it's very frustrating, and it really can make it hard for us. So what we need to do is step back and look at what we're doing, what we really need to be doing, and what we're doing to keep busy so that we don't think about what we don't want to think about. So sometimes it helps to journal or journal on your computer or in a book about what your days look like and what you're doing. And then step back and say, what of this can I cut out? What can I delegate? What can I ask a family member to do? One of the things that I found in my interviews with caregivers is that they don't ask for help. In fact, quite often, they will shut any help out. And we have to stop that. It's a maybe possessive thing. I'm not sure why. I know in my case, it's because I'm a control freak. But, we really need to be thinking about, what do I really need to get done? And when you're at work, be at work. And when you're with your kids, be with your kids. And when you're with your loved one, be with them fully. Don't sit on your phone while you're supposed to be helping someone. Be there, and you'll find that suddenly you have more time in your day.
That's great advice. And, it's important for us to focus on what's really important, right? There's a lot of things especially with dementia and the way things go that, maybe mom put on her blouse on backwards and she's walking around the house like that. But getting into an argument with her about that, it's not really important. No one sees her, other than yourself. So to point out mistakes so it's maybe not the best example, but we really need to look at what's important, and spending that quality time and having that joyfulness together is going to be a lot less stressful than arguing about a shirt, for instance.
Yeah. And, you're right. Nobody else is going to see that. But one of the things that I see often is that we'll go, Mom, you got your shirt on backwards again. That's going to set mom off.
Exactly.
Can we find a kinder way? Even though we're frustrated, can we just take a breath and then think, can I find a kinder way to manage this and help her and help yourself? Because as soon as you say, Mom, you've set yourself off too.
And something that you said, about caregivers being resistant to get help is Christy Turner, who's a regular on the Alzheimer's podcast, talked about how often that's because our care partners have a vision of what help looks like. And when we go and other people offer help, that's not that perfect vision that we have. So we resist it for that reason also. So we have to adjust what our vision looks like and accept that help that you talk about, because then if we do that, and for instance hiring a gardener to do the chores around the house, then that frees us up to spend with our loved one.
Yeah, that's true. And something else that I learned is that in most families there's that one person who is the natural caretaker, because they always want to do everything, and they go, oh, well, let Sally take care of it. I know she'll handle it best. And then the rest of the family backs away. Then the caretaker feels a little resentful about that. And it can cause a lot of trauma in the family. But when in reality, that caretaker just needs to say, hey, don't step away. I need your help. And sometimes that's hard to say, but it's really important, because the resentment that builds up in families afterwards, when, we really need each other, that can be really negative, because we have set it up to be that way. And people do want to help. They may just not know how to help. And it's our job to help them see what they can do, even if it's just come and sit with mom for an hour while I go get a cup of coffee.
So Janet, in your book, you mentioned that you interviewed other caregivers. That's correct, right?
Yes.
And how many interviews are in your book?
It's funny. And in the book, I've split up quite a few of the characters and combined some of the situations.
Okay. Because
I interviewed so many people. I think I literally interviewed about 75, but I have to say, as soon as I tell someone about the book, they have a caregiver story to share. And so those have all melded in my head. So I really decided not to make them individual personalities and bring things together to really illustrate the stories best.
Okay. And in those stories, you share techniques of mindfulness and stress reduction?
Yes, mindfulness, emotional intelligence, and stress reduction, just ways for us to manage more intelligently and be more self-aware, which is absolutely key.
Okay, so I think I understand what mindfulness and stress reduction is, but what is emotional intelligence?
Emotional intelligence is where we are a little bit smarter about how we manage our emotions. And it's really all about self-awareness, understanding not just how we feel mentally, but how we feel physically. Because when we're angry, we can think about, where do I feel that in my body? And we can look at those somatic experiences and really understand what's happening. Because one of the things that I learned is that we actually feel an emotion physically before our mind realizes what it is. So if we can feel that anger looming up in our body through our chest or an accelerated heart rate, any of those things, and go, oh, something's happening, that gives us a much faster way to respond than to just wait until we're angry and then we have to fix it.
Right. Because then once we get to that point, at least in my experience, we're not necessarily rational for a little bit. So, and we're not self-aware for a little bit. And then we go through a whole nother set of emotions of guilt and embarrassment, and we want to avoid that. So emotional intelligence, that sounds like a very interesting topic there as well.
It is. It definitely is.
And so your book's called When Life Hits the Fan, A Mindful Guide to Caring for Ourselves While Caring for Others. And that's book's available on Amazon?
It's available on Amazon right now, and it's at a discounted rate right now of $1.99, but it'll go up by the end of August.
Okay, and is that a paperback or is that a Kindle version?
That's a Kindle version. The paperback version and also an Audible version should be out by the end of the month.
Okay, great. And I'll add a link in the show notes for our listeners to look at that book. You also have a website, right, about these teachings that you do. Can you talk about that a little bit?
My website is janetfouts.com.
That's pretty simple.
Yep, it's really hard. And there is a page on the website, and it's janetfouts.com, all one word, Life Hits the Fan.
Okay.
And that has links to resources and meditations and a lot of really great family caregiving resources that are mentioned in the book. And that's all free. It isn't password protected or anything like that.
All right, cool. I'll definitely make sure I put links in the show notes for that as well. Let's talk a little bit more about mindfulness before we wrap up, because I'm not completely sure I have a clear image. If I had to tell somebody what it is, I think all I could say is it's about being in the moment. Can you just go through it one more time and help me get a better, clearer image of what mindfulness is and how it can help caregivers?
Well, actually, I think you summed it up really well.
It is that simple. Okay.
It is that simple. But, we have to look at it. That's the absolute simplest way of doing it. But, when we're mindful, we may take a breath before we speak. When we're mindful, we may stop thinking about, when we're talking to someone, we may stop thinking about how we're going to answer and actually listen to what they're saying. When we're mindful with someone that we know has some form of impairment, we can stop and think, how can I best communicate with them so that we're both walking away from the conversation, feeling good about it. And so, it is just being present in this moment. But when we really stop to think about it, we're very rarely in this moment. We're often thinking about dinner or lunch or a phone call or what's going to happen next. And we're not really here. So just being here is an incredibly powerful thing.
As a dementia caregiver, when our loved one's not necessarily in the same reality that we are, they are possibly living in a past time in their mind, or they're a little confused. It's so important for our care partners to be in the moment, but also go into that moment with their loved one as well.
Yes.
And recognize that, so that they can have a joyful time together rather than a contentious time together as they try to fix it. Because I know you use that term in your book. You called it fix-it mode. And I want to, our care partners, we have to get out of the fix-it mode and be in that moment with our loved ones, correct?
We absolutely do, because that's their moment and it's their reality. And who are we to tell them differently? It's not going to change. That's where they are right now. So, and sometimes those moments, can be scary, but they can also be beautifully nostalgic, and we should enjoy with them, even if at this point it's not true. It doesn't matter. In their mind, it is true. And we're not encouraging them to believe things that aren't true. We're encouraging them to express themselves and not feel that they can't express themselves with us.
Janet, as we wrap up this episode, do you have anything else you'd like to share about your book or about your any services you might be offering?
On the web page, When Life Hits the Fan, on my website, you'll find 30 days of meditations. And these are 3 to 5 minute lessons. They're very easy. And so if you want to start learning a little bit about mindfulness and meditation, that's a really good place to start. They're totally free, and you can take them however you want to take them. But I think that the idea in these meditations is to bring a sense of self-awareness and mindfulness to our lives and see if there's one there that resonates with you. And if there is, please do let me know. I really want to hear what people like and what they don't like and how I can help them best. And
is that webpage, is that the best way for our listeners to get in touch with you or follow you on social media if they choose?
The easiest place to find me is on social media. I am at jfouts on Twitter and on Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn at Janet Fouts. And of course, my blog is the best place to find me at janetfouts.com.
Okay. And I'll add those links on the show notes. And so Janet, has any last thoughts you want to share, or?
I just really thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak to this particular audience, because it's very close to my heart because of my father. And I just think that I really resonate with the struggle of day-to-day management of our loved ones when they're in this kind of a state. And, I really do sincerely want to help.
That's wonderful. I appreciate you being on the Alzheimer's podcast, and I look forward to looking at your website and maybe doing some of the meditations myself. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much.
All righty. Well, bye now. This concludes our conversation with mindfulness coach and caregiver Janet Fouts. I hope you recognize the need to release the stress and focus your awareness on the moment for the benefit of both you and your loved one. Be sure to check out the show notes at togetherinthis.com/episode 56 for any mentioned resources and for links to Janet's book, website, and social media locations. Thanks for joining us today, and I look forward to having you back next week for another episode of Navigating Rough Terrain with the Dementia Sherpa. Bye now. You've been listening to the Alzheimer's Podcast with Mike Good of Togetherness. For more information and to get the resources mentioned in this episode, visit togetherinthis.com/podcast.